Good evening. I declare the agenda briefing forum of the 19th of August 2025 held in Council Chambers at Level 2, 388 Hay Street, Subiaco, open at 5:33 p.m. Welcome councillors, staff, media and members of the public. Welcome to all of you. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people and I recognise their ongoing connection to this land. We'll take attendances now, and I think all councillors will be accounted for one way or another. We're joined electronically by Councillor White and Councillor Powell. Welcome to you both. And I see the remaining councillors all here in person, so good evening to you. We've got our whole executive leadership team here also, and a number of staff to answer any questions that may arise this evening. Okay, any leave of absence requests we'll deal with next week. Are there any disclosures of interest for tonight's agenda? The CEO's noted that there'll be a confidential item that we'll formally deal with next week regarding his employment or his performance review. We'll get that disclosure next week, I think. No approved deputations. Announcements. I don't usually make announcements at agenda briefings. Don't get too excited, Lloyd. No, I just want to wish the Tournament of Minds team at Jollymont Primary School all the best. I was invited to speak with them today. The Tournament of Minds is a competition that encourages lateral thinking and spontaneous thinking, and the question that they've chosen for themselves, or the challenge, is to design a new community facility. So they're designing a new community facility and they're designing it for the City of Subiaco. So they asked me to come along, assuming I'd have all the answers. They've got about 2 or 3 weeks from now to come up with their answer. Their ideas about funding the project range from sausage sizzles to a few other really ingenious things, but a lot of creativity from these Year 5 or Year 5s or Year 6s, a lot of insightful questions, and I hope that the answers that I was able to give to their questions will help them come up with an answer for their Tournament of Minds entry. And if they can work out what to do by way of a community facility in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then maybe we should get a couple of them on council for our needs. But it was a really, really nice afternoon, so I was really grateful to be invited to do that by one of the parents who was facilitating that team, and it was great to meet the principal there, Principal Ifla, as well. Okay, officer reports. There's 2 C6s on my sheet, but I think there's 7 public items this evening that we'll work through. So we'll start with C1, modified local planning policies 1.1 and 1.2. These were items which were deferred from last month's OCM. We've fielded various questions, obtained advice from a few sources, looking for any final question or additional questions, councillors, on C1, the local planning policies. Okay, it doesn't look like there's anything left to ask. That wouldn't be a sign of a lack of engagement. It would just be a sign that there's been many questions asked and answered during the week. We'll move on. C2, local planning scheme number 5, report of review. All right, well, come on, councillors, we've got an audience, but we can get, yeah, let's make it a short briefing then. No questions on C2. That's fine. It's another topic which we've had a comprehensive workshop on. Okay, C3, the climate change response plan, endorsement for adoption. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Member Connor. My question's this. how deeply do we look into purchasing carbon offsets?
Director Petrovsky, is that one for your team? Okay, Manager Planning Services, Anthony Denham.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor McMullen. So we look to review that annually, and obviously as part of purchasing offsets, we need to understand what our emissions are annually as well. So it is an annual review.
A follow-up.
Mm-hmm. Could I have a little more depth than it's an annual review? I'm talking about, there's a lot of trading in offsets. They aren't selling anything. They're not offsetting any, then there is no offset. it's an arguably very flawed system. I'm asking how deeply we look into it, not that we do it annually. What do we do annually? Thanks.
Happy to pass on the question, but if I was in the staff's shoes, you're asking how deeply we look into something. That's literally akin to how long is a piece of string. What do you want to know about the way that we analyse the carbon offsets?
Okay. I'll alter the question.
Let me help you. Are there gaps in the report? Are there gaps in the report? Are there unanswered questions that you want the staff to answer while they're here?
I'll start like this. Does the administration, does the CEO acknowledge, right, that there is suspicious trading in offsets? That's my first part of it. Is it acknowledged that is it a clean system or is it possibly a flawed system? I'll start with that.
You mean anywhere in the world? Yeah. I mean, anyone can answer that. CEO.
So firstly, what I'll say is through the consultation process, obviously this question was raised. In terms of any offset that we purchased, it's detailed on our website with the Climate Active report. In terms of, at the end of each year, we go through the process of determining that. And we've sought to, so if you go to the city's website, each of those years, there's various projects, some in terms of biodiverse reforestation in the Yarra Yarra corridor. So that's pretty important in Australia. There's some in other parts of the world as well. Each of those are listed. It's open for the public to consider whether or not they're worthy projects. But essentially, we've gone through that process. But we do acknowledge that at the moment that there is some concerns around that particular area, and particularly the Climate Active program, which is an Australian government program itself. But in addition to that, we've also got Target 5, which is to eliminate and try and get to net zero by 2040. So each of the, if you're asking the question, how confident I am on each of the offsets that we purchased over the years, they're all listed there. Nobody has ever stated to me that there's concerns in relation to those specific projects.
Look, thank you for at least acknowledging that, like anything, can be flawed. I will note the irony of the mayor pouring an aluminium can of water that was shipped here from Italy, okay, and how that would affect carbon footprints. But that's just my sense of irony. Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
We can but laugh. Thank you, Councillor Burns. Any other questions on the agenda item? Okay. What was that? Was that C3? C4. The tender for the provision of mulch supply and spread. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor McMullen. I just want there was an incident in the eastern states with asbestos appearing in mulch. I just wanted to ask what sort of safety provisions there might be for avoiding a similar type of situation here. I don't actually know how the asbestos got into the mulch, but it was a very high-profile case. Various public realms had to be cleaned. Obviously, that's not something we would want to happen here. So what sort of protective mechanisms are there, or are there in place to prevent that?
Director of Technical Services.
Actually, I might refer this on to the Manager of Parks and Environment Services, Giles Picard.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have stringent policies and procedures in place. In particular, it's the sourcing of mulch to Australian standards. So that puts the onus on the supplier. The Australian standards are a very rigorous standard that sets out the quality and contaminants within the mulch, and certainly not allowing for any of those contaminants to be present.
Just a follow-up question then, through you, Mayor. Do we rely on the contractor doing their own testing to meet that standard, or do we also do spot testing ourselves?
Certainly, and through you, Mr. Mayor, we'd also undertake site inspections. The onus would be on the contractor and on the supplier. We certainly would specify reputable suppliers that also have a great industry track record in terms of their contamination issues. And I'm certainly very well aware of the New South Wales case. Their yards are certainly also subject to those Australian standards requirements, but we'd also have process checks in place, so we would undertake spot checks to ensure that it was to a sufficient standard.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. A related question. I'm thinking that since the WMRC produce mulch and we are one of the councils that supports them, is WMRC one of the suppliers that we would be likely to use?
Manager.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. That would certainly be something we would look into. However, I'm not aware of the WMRC's mulch supply being produced to the Australian standard. We specify as well a chunky wood chip mulch, and for this contract, it's actually going to be applied through a blowing mechanism, blowing truck, and the mulch also needs to be suitable for that. But the key element is the application to Australian standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor De Vries. Okay, any other questions on the agenda item? No. Okay, C5, the off-lead fenced dog park petition. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I was just wondering if the petitioner, the person who's presented the petition, had been notified that it was for tonight's meeting, or that it's on this month's agenda.
Director of Technical Services.
I'm actually not sure, to be honest. I don't know, Chris, can you illuminate on this?
Thank you, through you. We haven't as yet, but we can do. I think, yeah, we'll certainly let her know that it's up on the next OCM.
Yeah, thank you. I think, given that was, I think it was presented October last year. I think that would be good if they can be notified. A question. Regarding the mentioned a statistic with 150% increase in, what was it, 150% increase in reported dog attacks in Subiaco. I wonder what the actual numbers are and over what time period. Thanks.
Who's going to be best placed to answer all these questions? Is it you, Mr. Rogers?
I think so.
For the most part, I see you're the author of the report. Please let us have your advice.
No worries. Thank you, through you. Look, it's been hard for us to kind of collate a lot of this data. A lot of the dog attack incidents that we get reported to us are often quite old, not very fresh. Sometimes they're secondhand. We have noticed a spike in dog attacks over the last 12 months, and that is in, I guess, the same sort of trend that other local governments are reporting as well. I attended a Western Central local committee about animal management, and every other local government is certainly reporting the fact that there's been a bit of an uptick on dog attacks. We're not too sure why at this point, but certainly that's been the reported trend.
Maybe if I can ask a follow-up to your question, Councillor Johnston. We were presented with a statistic, Mr Rogers. It talks about a 150% increase. Presumably there's a start and an end point to that increase.
Yes, so that was the last financial year. So that's the 24-25 financial year.
And that increase would be based on attacks over the previous financial year?
Correct.
Any follow-ups, Councillor?
I just wonder if we're dealing in single-digit increase or, 100. What's the real number to give it some perspective?
Sure. So we're looking at, from memory, we're not as bad as the other local governments, but we're certainly kind of, for this financial year, we're coming up to about 38 reported dog attacks. For the last financial year, from memory, it was about 46.
Maybe we can get something in a written form with with the real numbers for the last 2 years, so we can have a look at that, because the 150% is not working out for me.
No, and it was observed from the gallery. I think that those numbers suggest a decrease in attacks.
Yeah, so I'm referring to for the 25-26 financial year, so the financial year we're currently in, we're at 38
already.
Already acknowledging the fact that this obviously financial year hasn't finished. So obviously we're seeing a bit of an uptick. That uptick is increasing, but I'm more than happy to provide the data so that council can review that.
Okay, thank you. Some numbers would, I think, assist.
Absolutely.
Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, do you think that might correlate with the fact that the reporting is now much easier to do as a follow-up to why there is a sudden increase? Like in reality, we won't know the reasons for it, but is that a possibility?
Thank you. Through you, definitely. I think there's been more of a community mindedness approach now about the severity of dog attacks, and the media has also kind of helped that a little bit in some strange ways. There has been a lot of reporting about some quite severe dog attacks in the past, not in Subiaco, but I think that's raised public awareness, and I think that's kind of raised the notion that it should be reported.
Have we had a net dog sort of on the lead education program in the last few years, just to encourage people to be aware that there's certain requirements? And follow-up question, which I won't need to follow up then, is can we create some wayfinding for people to know where the current dog parks, fenced dog parks and unfenced dog parks are, as a way to increase people's awareness that there are actually quite a number of dog parks in the vicinity where most people can get to within 2 to 3 minutes if they're in a car, maybe a 15-minute walk at best. Is that a possibility? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you. We currently do that. So our rangers currently attend all the parks on a daily basis. They rotate through them. They speak to all the dog owners. They educate the dog owners about the need to have their dogs on lead. They hand out free leads with the City of Subiaco inscribed upon them. They pass out dog toys and water bowls. And during those interactions, they've got the opportunity to actually have those conversations and educate dog owners about responsible dog ownership. At the same time, they also hand out pamphlets that illustrate how to get microchipped, how to be registered, and where all the dog parks actually are as well.
Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was wondering, I know when the lead petitioner spoke to me about this, one of her comments was around the Nicholson Road Reserve. What do we call it? Nicholson Road Reserve? Oh, I got the right. Yeah, where the Palms is, and it's an off-lead dog park, but it's not fenced. And one of her comments was around that the danger of that being a busy main road. I wondered, and I've read the report, and clearly there's issues with finding a big enough space, and that it is single use, and then there's the wear and tear on the turf, etc. All those issues. I wondered if there'd be any value for the petitioners, and if it would be feasible that we fence just along one side of that park, along the boundary between Thomas Road, along the edge of the park, just so that would prevent dogs running onto the road. I wondered what staff would think about that, and if that might be something that you'd come back to and consider, if there's any merit in it.
I'll ask the director to take that question.
Thank you. So I take your point, Councillor Johnston, as far as what could be done at Nicholson Road. What I'd probably suggest, and I guess it's in line with the officer recommendation, is anything we do at Nicholson Reserve probably shouldn't be done in isolation, and that's why the staff are recommending that ideally that would be considered more broadly as part of that open space review that we've already committed to. It's in the council plan, and we'll be looking to start later this financial year. Just because as soon as you put up a fence, you potentially prohibit other uses of the reserve. So there could be other considerations that we haven't contemplated at this stage. So I think it'd be a bit premature just to say, yes, we can put up a fence there, because there could be other things to consider. And that would be the best, probably, avenue to do that.
Thank you. Councillor.
I'd just like to clarify, I wasn't meaning to enclose so that it would, I was meaning just along the Thomas Street boundary, not to enclose, so that people would, so it would still be mixed use. It would simply be along one side of the 3 sides of the reserve. So that was all I was wondering about. And obviously, if the petitioners, if that wasn't something that interested them and they didn't think there was any benefit, then there would be no point. So it would be something that would need to be with some sort of discussion with them to see if that was of assistance. Thanks.
So for you, presiding member, so I take your point. And obviously there is a small portion of fence where the playgroup currently sits. I think there's no issue with us going back to the lead petitioner and whoever else to just discuss that as an option. Like I said, there could well be other implications that I'm not aware of, because obviously there's access to service and other things that could prohibit such a thing. So I think it could warrant further investigation, but I probably wouldn't commit to anything right now. Yeah.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, just a quick one. The term dog attacks, this is to do with dog attacks on other dogs or on people. The implication here about significant veterinary treatment implies that it's actually on dogs, not on people. Is that correct?
Thank you, through you. So dog attacks, they're primarily, at the moment, they're primarily dog on dog, but there are obviously dog on human, and that's what we're referring to. So when in the report we're talking about veterinary care, obviously the report's kind of focusing more on the idea of that enclosed dog park and that kind of dog on dog interaction, but dog attacks obviously do occur between dogs and humans.
So this 150% increase, this is in attacks on both, attacks by dogs on anybody, and cats, dogs, everything.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm mostly concerned about attacks on people, but obviously dogs are important as well. It's not cats, no, not so much. What would be the split in terms of sort of attacks on people compared to attacks on dogs?
Thank you, through you. Primarily, it's a dog on dog. Although we do obviously have a number of dog on human, but it's primarily dog on dog.
That's fine. So enclosing dogs in confined spaces is probably contributing to that.
Thank you, and through. It's a risk. It's a risk. It can be it depends on. I think in the report it kind of points out the fact that we don't have any control of what type of dogs go into these parks. So we don't know what their behaviour is. We don't know how good the owner has in terms of recall or control of their dog. So it's a risk. It's a big risk. And the risk gets a little bit more increased, if you like, because the victim dog is unable to escape. So they can get cornered, and so that can increase the severity of the attack.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors. Councillor Kosovich.
Mayor, and my questions are a couple of questions for the Director of Technical Services, please. I note that 18 signatures on the petition in support of an off-lead fence dog park in Central Ward have come from people who don't reside in our community, which leads me to ask why these 18 people were not removed from the petition, please.
Mr Hambley.
Thank you for your question, for you, presiding member. So, obviously, we consider the petition on its merits. We made a point of just stipulating, I guess, the split of both residents and those not within the city. But I wouldn't say we necessarily remove it. We have to consider it. And like it's not acknowledged in the report, often dog parks are used by others in the community, and the broader that can include the broader community outside our boundaries. So they wouldn't be excluded. We've got to consider them, and that's been considered as part of the report and acknowledged, at least in the report as well, for council's consideration.
Thank you. And a second question, if I may, please. I recall a request from a resident for an off-lead fence dog park in Central Ward coming before council about 3 years ago. What were the reasons behind that one-person petition not succeeding, please?
To help your memory, Director, I'm not sure that a formal report came to council. I certainly remember discussions happening at outside of council meetings at the request of a resident or ratepayer, and that was brought to council by a councillor of the day. It was a discussion, so on that basis, are you able to answer the question?
Thank you, and for you, presiding member. And as you have put, we were aware that there was, I guess, discussion amongst the community on that basis. It did not eventuate to a formal petition or request to council. And at that time, which was about 3 years ago, I believe it didn't proceed any further following a dog attack that actually did occur on I think it was a small girl outside Subiaco Primary, where a dog was tied to the fence, but still attacked the girl. So I think in light of that event, the possible petition or request was I think withdrawn or put on hold for a time.
Thank you, Mr Hambley. I have no further questions, Mayor.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, I think that's C5 done. C6 relates to the, what will now be called the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. Any questions on C6, councillors? Councillor White.
Hi, thank you. I guess just a quick question. I understand that this is being done because of the state government's reform. And I guess my question is, are we fulfilling the letter of the reform and not the spirit of the reform through this? So just changing the name of the committee without changing any of its functions seems a bit, I don't know, odd. Is there any comment that staff can offer in terms of, if we're adding the word improvement to the title, shouldn't there be something to do about its function in relation to this? Thanks.
Director of Corporate Services.
Sure. I guess that part of the challenge is at the moment, we know that under the reforms that we're going to be required to rename it as the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, but there's no regulations released yet in terms of what improvement is to mean. It's not to say that, say, for example, we can't review the terms of reference of the committee to better reflect the intent of improvement, and that is certainly something that council can consider now or wait until there's new independent members on board, say, after the elections, to consider that. It's really a cosmetic naming change. There's no urgency around changing the name of the committee if council is not minded to. So it's just a really easy change to meet in line with the intention of the upcoming reforms.
Councillor White.
I don't want this to adjoin another item, but the problem, I guess, is what are we improving? Improvement could be anything beyond finance, couldn't it? It just seems to me that again, I guess I understand where it's coming from. It just seems that we're changing the name, and it seems a bit meaningless to me if we don't look at what we're improving. It doesn't affect the functions in any way. Thank you. I'll leave it there.
If I may just follow that up, the report indicates that the reform theme revolves around improved financial management and reporting. If that is all that there is to the reform, I would think that we ought to be following the letter of the law, and we needn't go any further. But is there more to the, I suppose, the spirit and intent of the reform than what's indicated in the report to council, Ms. Williston?
Yeah, sure. So that's right. You can take improvement in terms of, the sense that audit and risk committees usually consider an improvement, which is process improvement, and particularly as it relates to controls, risk-related controls. But there is a broader intent which has been expressed by the department around things like, for example, council plans and delivery of council plans coming through the audit and risk committee. But there's nothing set in stone around that at the moment. But it might just give you a bit more context as to what the intent of the department is as well.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you. Okay, doesn't look like it. C7, the financial statements and reports for the month ending the 31st of July 2025. Any questions on C7? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I was just got a couple of queries. The higher than anticipated expenditure in employee costs due to timing of workers' comp payments, nearly $200,000. Is that for the whole year, that higher than anticipated cost? And what was the amount that was expected? Thank you.
Director Corporate Services.
Sure, thank you, through you, Mayor. The timing of the workers' comp payment, when we've gone through the budget phasing, we've allocated the workers' comp amount equally across the 12 months of the year, whereas the workers' comp payment is payable in 2 instalments, so one in June and one, I assume in January, therefore. So that gives you an idea of the overall magnitude. When we phase the budget in order to inform the financial reports, we do try to reflect lumpy items like that. Just sometimes, we do the phasing across 12 months and it doesn't get picked up, so we end up with a timing variance.
And how much, what's the actual number then? Because that's just the higher than number.
I can take that on notice just to get you that number.
Any other questions on the financial statements and reports? Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, thank you. And are they as a result of claims, or is that the payment that you make, like a payroll tax, for example?
Sure. It's a number that you pay essentially. So if you get a workers' compensation claim, it's like a form of insurance that all employers need to pay. So it's the amount that you pay for that cover rather than towards any claims.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. And the writing off of the long-dated outstanding infringements, we're saying that we may still, it's written that it's noted the writing off of debt does not necessarily mean the efforts won't be made to pursue it. So I'm just wondering what that would entail, and is it likely that we would recoup any of that written off debt in the future? Thanks.
Thank you. So the assessment that we need to make in line with the accounting standards is whether it's likely to be recoverable. So the assessment has been made in the case of the debt that's been written off that it's not, and it's around things like, do we have the details of the person who actually made the infringement, can we contact them? If we can't, then obviously that becomes quite challenging to recover. Also things like the passage of time. So if more than, a certain number of years passes and it does become, considerably challenging to recover, it doesn't mean that if we don't obtain the details or that if we don't find some other way to obtain the infringement that we won't do it. It just means that we consider it quite unlikely, and therefore from an accounting treatment we write it off.
Thank you. I understand that. I was meaning more about the effort to pursue it.
Yep. And so the effort to pursue it, I think we've kind of been through this a bit at previous agenda briefing forums around, we make some initial efforts and then we refer it to the Fines Enforcement Registry. And so, they've got a really dedicated, streamlined capability around that. I can hand over to the Director of Technical Services in case you'd like to add to that.
Thank you. Just to add on, so obviously the situation is once it's been referred to FIR, whilst they might not initially have the details of the person, or indeed their details have changed, obviously they have various channels whereby they can get that information, and it's not uncommon that a situation arises where an infringement is sitting with a person, they get updated details and they actually reissue the infringement and it gets followed up that way. So sometimes that can be a matter of years, or indeed in very rare circumstances, sometimes they'll get paid many, many, many years in arrears for other reasons, and obviously they will still accept that.
Thank you. And just going back a couple of questions, I understand there's a dollar figure for the workers' comp query that you asked earlier, Councillor. Director Corporate Services, what? No?
I can answer. You can, I don't think it's right though. No, it's the total insurance. Oh, okay. So the total insurance is 843 for the year, but half of it 463. So that's the half payment that's made for all insurances. Not all that's split up between workers' compensation as well. So, but that's sort of the magnitude.
Okay. Doesn't look like there's any questions on C7. Any further questions? Councillor Burns.
Thanks, Mayor McMillan. Look, my question is this, but before, because I can't ask anything on a procedural motion where you're about to head to close the doors, my question is this. In C1 and 7.2 and 7.1, which are confidential, and I understand the nature of the confidentiality, I see inside both of them matters of public concern that could be discussed without delving into the more confidential parts of it. I see they can be broken. And
oh, hang on, we're still on C7. This isn't a question about C7. It's
I thought you finished with C7. I was breaking before we got there.
Okay.
But if you finish for C7, then I'll bring it back up. Thanks.
Right. Okay. Well, they're confidential items, so we're going to deal with them outside of the briefing.
Yeah, I know, but my question's about the nature of the items. And as soon as you say it's a procedural motion, I can vote against it, but I can't speak to it. I'm just trying to ask generally, why can't they be looked at as having a public interest that without delving into matters that I would consider private? If you have a look at them, they're pretty obvious.
Okay. I think I understand the question. And next week, both agenda items will be the subject of procedural motions which explain the basis on which we'd go behind closed doors, but perhaps we can get some governance advice about the basis on which both of those two items will be dealt with confidentially, bearing in mind the Act is pretty prescriptive about what can and can't be dealt with confidentially, and there's not many grounds that allow us to do that. Director Corporate Services, please.
Yeah, and so we did consider that as well, because it's a little bit of an interesting one, because both of them pertain to business plans which have been released to the public, and so those business plans have been made public. The challenge is that there's information that is material to assisting the elected members' council to make a decision, which is commercial in nature, and so under the confidentiality provisions of the Local Government Act, it makes sense to go behind closed doors. You could omit that information from the papers to make it public and provide it separately, but then it perhaps wouldn't be a solid audit trail in terms of having all of the information required to help to make the decision in one spot. Hope that makes sense.
Thank you. A follow-up question to that, Councillor Burns.
Well, look, I accept the response, but it goes to the weight. What percentage of the matter, right?
Hang on, Councillor Burns. I can see why you want to do this week. It's because you don't get a chance to debate the procedural motion next week. So, you've formed the view that it shouldn't be dealt with confidentially. What are we doing now? Are we debating the reason why we're going to go behind closed doors?
I'm not debating it. I'm just trying to get an understanding of it. That why can't there's just certain aspects that are, to me, beneficial for a public understanding.
But I think the advice I heard earlier.
I'm not trying to expose anything, please.
Yeah, no, because there's really nothing to really expose. But I think the advice that was given a question ago was that we'd have to carve out bits from the report so that we could discuss the non-confidential bits and keep the confidential bits behind closed doors. And I just don't see how you would have a meaningful discussion about a confidential item if you carved it up in that way. You'd just be talking about bits and pieces.
But perhaps during the week we could drill into it a little bit. I'm just saying.
Look, I'm okay. Let's ask the staff to undertake that. But I would say, for the record, we've got a pretty good track record of not going behind closed doors. And there's two items which, by anyone's measure, has confidential elements to it. So that is the basis on which we're going behind closed doors. Yeah.
Elements is a part thereof.
Well, there'd be filler words in the whole report which aren't confidential, but I think the thrust of both reports are confidential, and that's why it's proposed that they be dealt with confidentially. So look, we can discuss more of this after we close the briefing, but I think for tonight's purposes, we will just discuss the public items. Councillor Johnston, we've finished C7 already, so what's the question about?
That just reminded me, I have a question relating to C1, just whether the legal advice will be made public or not. Thank you.
I don't know who's best placed to answer that. Director of Development Services.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor. No, we don't. We don't make legal advice public as a general practice.
Okay, follow up. Is it still on C1? All right.
I wonder if there might be an exception in this case, given the significant community interest in that item, and that the nature of some of the questions was around
Councillor
the legal
Johnston,
side.
I don't think we need to share a 19-page legal advice with half a dozen people in the community, but perhaps what we can do is work on an advice to community that's based on the advice that's been taken internally and with the assistance of our lawyers as well, if that's something that staff could work on, if they haven't already released those types of answers.
Thank you, and through you, Matt. Yep, that's certainly something that we can work on. The legal advice didn't throw up any hurdles or any difficulties with our understanding of our policies, and are generally consistent with the way we've portrayed and understood our policies, both with elected members and the community. So that's about as much I can say in the public, but if we do need to provide more advice, we can continue to do that.
And if I may, I think people following can just reach their own conclusions. The officer recommendation hasn't changed, and we've sought advice, so you can kind of piece together the thrust of what the advice might have been. But the general practice, and there's nothing unusual about this at the City of Subiaco or anywhere else, is that you get legal advice, and it's privileged and confidential to the organisation that's obtained that advice. That's just the nature of legal advice. So we will share what we can and answer the questions that we can, so that everyone goes fully informed into next week's meeting. But the usual practice, I would think, is pretty sound in this situation. Okay, well, I think we're through the questions on the public agenda. There's a few confidential items which we can talk about once we close the briefing, but if there's no one wanting to revisit agenda items, what I'll do is I'll declare the agenda briefing forum closed. at 6:17 p.m. Thank you, councillors, for the questions and staff for your advice and assistance.